The crystal chandelier caught the light just right as the champagne flute slipped from Mia Thornton's trembling hand. It shattered on the marble floor of the Greenwich mansion, and for 3 seconds the entire room went silent. Then Vivienne Thornton's voice cut through like a blade. Of course. Even breaking glass, you're still a disappointment. Mia was 25 years old, standing in a $5,000 a night ballroom, wearing a $200 dress. Around her, women dripped in diamonds. Men wore watches worth more than most people's cars. And there she was, the eldest daughter of the Thornton Empire, being torn apart in front of Connecticut's elite. This was Isabel's 21st birthday party, her younger sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Mia had grown up in this world of old money and older secrets. Greenwich, Connecticut wasn't just wealthy, it was a fortress of generational power, where your last name meant everything and your first name meant nothing unless you earned it. The Thorntons owned half the waterfront properties along Long Island Sound. They sat on charity boards, country club committees, museum boards of trustees. But Mia? She was the stain they couldn't remove. Edward Thornton, her father, stood near the grand staircase, scotch in hand, that permanent look of disgust etched into his face whenever he looked at her. Vivienne, her mother, moved through the crowd like a queen, air-kissing guests, her pearls catching the light, her smile sharp enough to cut. Isabel floated in the center of it all, 21 and flawless. Blonde hair curled to perfection. A champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than a semester at Yale. She laughed at something a senator's son whispered in her ear. Mia bent down to pick up the broken glass. A server rushed over, but Vivienne waved him off. Let her clean it up, Vivienne announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. God knows she needs to learn how to be useful somehow. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Polite, restrained, but laughter all the same. Mia's hands shook as she picked up the shards. One piece cut her finger. Blood welled up, bright red against her pale skin. She stood slowly, wrapping her finger in a cocktail napkin. That's when Edward decided to speak. You know what the problem is, Mia? His voice boomed across the ballroom. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. You've always been weak. Soft. You don't have what it takes to be a Thornton. Mia's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel every eye on her. The Vanderbilts. The Rockefellers. The old Connecticut money that had known her family for generations. Dad, please, she started. Please? Vivienne laughed, a sound like ice cracking. She begs now. How fitting. She turned to the crowd, playing to them like an actress on stage. We gave her everything. The best schools. The best opportunities. And what did she do? Failed out of Columbia. Couldn't hold a job at our own company. Can't even dress herself properly for a family event. Isabel giggled from across the room. That sound hit Mia harder than any words. Edward walked toward her, each step deliberate. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. You're not a real Thornton, Mia, he said, his voice low but carrying. You're the family's mistake. A burden we've carried for 25 years. He paused, letting that sink in. Hell, you should be grateful we even let you use the name. The room swam. Mia's vision blurred, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She looked around the room, at the faces she'd known her whole life. The country club friends, the business partners, the society women who'd watched her grow up. Not one of them met her eyes. Not one of them spoke up. Isabel raised her champagne glass. To family, she said sweetly. The real ones, anyway. The guests drank. They actually drank to that. Something inside Mia cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice on a frozen lake, spider webbing out in all directions, ready to give way. She stood there for another moment, feeling the weight of their judgment, their mockery, their absolute certainty that she was nothing. Then she turned and walked away. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing in the high-ceilinged ballroom, through the foyer, past the ancestral portraits lining the walls. Thornton's going back 200 years, all of them looking down at her with the same disgust she'd seen in her father's eyes. She pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the Connecticut night. The October air hit her face, cold and sharp. The Long Island Sound stretched out in the distance, dark water reflecting scattered moonlight. Behind her, the music started up again. The party continued. They'd already forgotten her. Mia walked down the stone pathway, past the fountain, past the perfectly manicured gardens, past the life she'd known for 25 years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vivienne. Don't bother coming back. You're an embarrassment. Mia stopped walking. She stood there in the dark, Her cheap dress, her bleeding finger, her shattered dignity. And then something shifted. The tears dried. Her hands steadied. Her breathing slowed. She looked back at the mansion, golden light spilling from every window, laughter carrying on the wind. "Fine," she whispered to the night. "You want a mistake? Watch me correct it." She pulled out her phone and opened her browser. Started searching. Family trusts, Connecticut inheritance laws, Thornton family history. She'd spent 25 years being their punching bag, their disappointment, their shame. Now she'd spend however long it took uncovering every secret they'd buried. Because Mia Thornton had just learned the most important lesson of her life: the people who hurt you the most are always hiding something worse. And she was going to find it. 3 weeks after the party, Mia Thornton vanished. The Greenwich gossip mill churned out stories. She'd had a breakdown. She was in a psychiatric facility upstate. She'd run off to Europe to escape her shame. Vivienne fed the flames with calculated precision, telling anyone who'd listen that her eldest daughter was getting help and working through her emotional issues. The truth was simpler and far more dangerous. Mia was 15 miles away in Brooklyn, living in a 4th-floor walk-up in Park Slope. No doorman, no marble floors. Just 600 square feet of worn hardwood and a radiator that clanked at 3 in the morning. Her windows looked out at a bodega and a laundromat. She'd never felt more alive. The apartment was a war room now. Papers covered every surface. Bank statements, trust documents, corporate filings. Her laptop sat open on a card table, multiple tabs running searches through Connecticut probate records, offshore banking databases, shell corporation registries. Mia had spent 2 years at Yale studying finance before Edward pulled her out. "You're wasting my money," he'd told her. "Women in this family marry well. They don't need degrees." Turns out those 2 years were enough. She traced the money like following blood in the water. It started with Aunt Clara's estate. Clara Thornton had died 3 years ago at 72. The official story was accidental alcohol poisoning. She'd been drinking, taken her medication. A tragic mistake. Mia pulled up the death certificate. Signed by Dr. Richard Chen, the Thornton family physician for 30 years. The same doctor who'd prescribed Vivienne's sleeping pills. The same doctor who golfed with Edward every Sunday at the country club. She dug deeper. Clara's trust fund had been worth $8.3 million. Old railroad money, going back to the 1,880 seconds. The primary beneficiary, according to the original documents filed in 1992, was supposed to be her eldest living niece. That was Mia. But the current documents, filed 6 months after Clara's death, showed a different story. Edward and Vivienne had been named co-executors. The money had been distributed to the estate and then quietly funneled into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. $4.2 million, hidden behind shell corporations with names like Meridian Holdings, LLC, and Thornton Asset Management. They'd forged Clara's signature on amended trust documents. Mia had the originals. She'd found them in a storage unit in Stamford, Clara's personal effects that no one had bothered to sort through. The handwriting didn't match. Not even close. Mia sat back in her folding chair, her hands shaking. This wasn't just greed. This was systematic fraud. This was theft on a scale that could destroy everything the Thornton name stood for. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Meet me at the High Line. 20 minutes. Julian's voice. Her brother. Then he hung up. Mia grabbed her coat and headed for the subway. The High Line was quiet for a Tuesday evening. October wind cut through the elevated park, scattering leaves across the walkway. Julian stood near the Chelsea overlook, hands in the pockets of his Burberry coat, staring out at the Hudson River. He looked thinner than she remembered. Older. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at Isabel's party. "I know what you're doing," he said without turning around, "and you need to stop." Mia stepped beside him. "Why would I do that?" "Because you don't understand what you're dealing with." Julian's jaw tightened. Dad's been covering this for years. The company, the reputation, everything depends on that money staying buried. "You mean the money he stole?" "The money he borrowed from a trust that would have sat there doing nothing." Julian finally looked at her. His eyes were hollow. "I had to make it legal, Mia. The books, the transfers, the offshore accounts, that was me. I signed off on everything." Mia felt something crack inside her chest. "You knew. This whole time, you knew what they did to Clara." Julian didn't answer. That was answer enough. "Why are you telling me this?" Mia asked. He was quiet for a long moment. The city noise filled the space between them. Car horns, distant sirens, the constant hum of 8 million lives happening all at once. Because you need to know the whole truth. Julian turned to face her fully. It wasn't just Dad. Vivienne orchestrated everything. The amended trust documents, the offshore transfers, even the timing. What timing? Julian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Clara didn't die from accidental alcohol poisoning. Vivienne was the one who poisoned her. The world tilted. Mia grabbed the railing to steady herself. She what? Mixed antifreeze into her evening cocktails for 3 weeks. Slow enough that it looked like kidney failure from drinking. Fast enough that Clara never suspected. Julian's face was pale. I found out 2 years ago. Found the receipts, the purchase orders. Vivienne didn't even try to hide it that well. She knew I'd never tell. Why? Mia's voice cracked. Why would she do that? Because Clara was changing her will. She'd found out about Isabel's spending habits, Dad's gambling debts. She was going to leave everything to charity. Julian shook his head. Vivienne couldn't let that happen. She needed that money for Isabel's trust fund, for the lifestyle they'd promised her. Mia felt sick. Murder. This wasn't just fraud anymore. This was murder. And you just let it happen, she said. I had no proof. Just suspicions and receipts that could have meant anything. Julian finally met her eyes. But now? Now you have the trust documents. You have the financial trail. You add murder to that, and they're done. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and pressed it into her hand. Everything's on here. The real documents. The forged ones. The offshore account numbers. The whole thing. Mia stared at it. This tiny piece of plastic contained enough evidence to destroy her family. Why are you helping me? She asked. Julian looked out at the river again. The sun was setting over New Jersey, painting the water gold and red. Because I'm tired, Mia. I'm so tired of being their fixer, their accomplice. His voice broke. And because Clara deserved better than what they did to her. You deserve better than what they did to you. He walked away without another word, disappearing into the evening crowd. Mia stood there as the city lights began to flicker on around her. Manhattan stretched out in all directions. Millions of windows lighting up like stars. This was bigger than personal revenge now. This was about justice for a woman who'd been murdered for her money. This was about exposing the rot at the heart of an empire. Mia closed her fist around the flash drive. The Thorntons had built their legacy on old money and older lies. She was about to burn it all down. Mia pressed send on 3 emails that would change everything. The first went to the Internal Revenue Service. 4.2 million in unreported offshore income, complete documentation attached. The second went to the Connecticut Attorney General's office. Evidence of trust fund fraud, forged signatures, illegal asset transfers. The third went to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Everything Julian had given her, plus her own research, compiled into a case file that could take down an empire. She sat back in her Brooklyn apartment and waited for the world to explode. It took 72 hours. But when it came from a direction she never expected. Heiress Mia Thornton suffers mental breakdown. The headline appeared first on page 6, then spread like wildfire. The New York Post picked it up, then CNN, then everyone. The story was everywhere. Mia Thornton, troubled daughter of the prominent Greenwich family, had experienced a psychotic break. She was making wild accusations against her own parents. She'd been struggling with mental health issues for years. Sources close to the family expressed deep concern for her well-being. The sources were anonymous, but Mia knew exactly who they were. Her phone rang nonstop. Reporters. Former Yale classmates she hadn't talked to in years. People she didn't even know, all wanting a comment, a statement, proof that she wasn't crazy. She stopped answering after the first day. Then the professionals showed up. Dr. Helena Marsh, a prominent Manhattan psychiatrist, gave an interview to Good Morning America. She'd never met Mia but somehow had detailed insights into her deteriorating mental state and delusions of persecution. She used words like paranoid tendencies and fabricated narratives. Vivienne had bought her credentials, her reputation, her willingness to destroy a stranger on national television. The IRS agent who'd been assigned to Mia's case called, Miss Thornton, given these recent revelations about your mental health, we're going to need additional verification of your claims. Translation. They didn't believe her anymore. The Attorney General's office sent a formal letter. Her complaint was being reviewed in light of new information regarding the complainant's credibility. Every door she'd pushed open was slamming shut. Mia sat in her apartment, watching her credibility burn in real time on cable news. 25 years of being called worthless, and now the whole world agreed. She'd never felt more alone. The package arrived on a Thursday morning. No return address, just her name written in Julian's handwriting. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the pages yellowed with age. Clara's diary. Mia's hands trembled as she opened it. Clara's handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. The entries started normal enough. Garden club meetings, dinner parties, thoughts on current events. But then, about 6 months before her death, the tone shifted. November 12th. Vivienne visited again today. She's been unusually attentive lately. Made me a drink herself, insisted I finish it. I felt ill afterward. Probably nothing. November 28th. Edward stopped by with papers to sign. Trust amendments, he said. I was too foggy to read them properly. The drinks Vivienne makes are getting stronger. December 15th. I don't trust them anymore. Something is wrong. My hands shake. I can't think straight. Vivienne watches me like a hawk watches a mouse. Mia's blood ran cold as she read. Clara had known. She'd documented her own murder. But then, on the last page, something else. A name that made Mia's world tilt again. January 3rd. If anything happens to me, the truth is buried with Lillian, my adopted niece. Though I suspect she's more than that. Edward's eyes whenever he looks at her. The way Vivienne treats her differently. I think Lillian might be his daughter. God help us all. Mia read it 3 times. Lillian Harper, adopted niece, possibly Edward's illegitimate daughter. Clara's suspicions laid out in fading ink. She grabbed her laptop and started searching. Lillian Harper, New York. Lillian Harper, Connecticut. Lillian Harper, adoption records. It took 6 hours, but she found her. Lillian Harper lived in a Tribeca loft worth $3 million. She worked as an art consultant. Her Instagram showed a life of gallery openings, Michelin star restaurants, private jets, and in several photos, there she was. Isabel, her sister. Their arms around each other, champagne glasses raised, designer clothes, fake smiles. They weren't just connected, they were close. Mia sent a simple message through LinkedIn. We need to talk. I know about Clara. The response came within an hour. Le Cirque. Tomorrow. Noon. Le Cirque was old money Manhattan. Red velvet, crystal chandeliers, waiters who'd been there for 30 years. Mia walked in wearing her only good blazer, feeling every eye on her. The crazy heiress who'd accused her family of murder. Lillian was already there, sitting at a corner table. She was 28, beautiful in that effortless way that came from good genes and better surgeons. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like a Thornton. Mia sat down without being invited. You look terrible, Lillian said, sipping her Pellegrino. The breakdown narrative really did a number on you. So you knew they stole from me, Mia said. No pleasantries. No small talk. Lillian smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Stole is such an ugly word. They reallocated resources. Clara was old, dying anyway. The money was just sitting there. She was murdered. She was sick. Lillian's voice was ice. What Vivienne did was a mercy. Quick, painless. Better than rotting away in some nursing home. Mia felt bile rise in her throat. And you got a cut, you and Isabel. That's why you're helping them destroy me. It's called survival, Mia. Lillian leaned forward. This family eats the weak. You were always too soft for the Thornton name. Too emotional. Too needy. Clara thought you might be Edward's daughter, Mia said quietly. Lillian's perfect composure cracked, just for a second. Clara was paranoid at the end. Was she wrong? Silence. That was answer enough. Mia stood up. You're helping them frame me as mentally ill. You're helping Isabel keep blood money. You're covering up murder because it benefits you. And what are you going to do about it? Lillian's voice was sharp. You have no credibility. No allies. The whole world thinks you're insane. Mia looked down at this woman, her possible half-sister. Another victim of Edward's sins who'd chosen to become a perpetrator instead. Then watch me become harder than all of you. She walked out of Le Cirque into the Manhattan afternoon. The city swirled around her, millions of people going about their lives, completely unaware that in that restaurant, a war had just been declared. Mia pulled out her phone and called the one person who might still believe her, a former Yale professor. Someone who owed Clara Thornton a favor from decades ago. Professor Chen, this is Mia Thornton. I need your help, and I need you to help me find everyone who loved Clara. The game had changed. Vivienne wanted to isolate her, break her, make her disappear. Instead, Mia was about to build an army. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry box. 300 of New York's most powerful people filled the space, champagne flutes in hand, designer gowns sweeping across marble floors. The Thornton Foundation Annual Gala, a tradition for 30 years. The event where Connecticut old money rubbed shoulders with Manhattan new wealth, all in the name of charity. Vivienne Thornton stood on stage, radiant in a champagne Dior gown, diamonds at her throat. Behind her, a massive LED screen displayed the Thornton family crest. She gripped the podium like a queen addressing her subjects. "The Thornton legacy," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "has always been built on 3 principles: integrity, family, and service to those less fortunate." The crowd applauded. Senators, CEOs, museum curators, society editors, everyone who mattered. Edward stood near the bar, scotch in hand, accepting congratulations from a hedge fund manager. Isabel floated through the crowd in a red Valentino gown, her engagement ring catching every light. Lillian Harper lingered near the back, champagne untouched, eyes scanning the room. No one noticed the young woman in the simple black dress slip in through the service entrance. No one saw her nod to the AV technician, a friend of Professor Chen's. No one paid attention as she moved through the shadows toward the stage. Vivienne continued her speech. "This family has weathered storms. We've faced challenges, but we've always emerged stronger, because we understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives we touch, the legacy we leave behind." That's when the LED screen flickered. Vivienne's smile faltered. She glanced back at the screen. The Thornton crest was glitching, breaking apart into pixels. Then it went black. For 3 seconds, the ballroom was silent. Then Julian Thornton's face appeared, 20 feet high, his voice crystal clear through the sound system. "My name is Julian Thornton, and I'm here to tell you the truth about my family." The room erupted in confused murmurs. Edward's scotch glass froze halfway to his lips. Isabel's face drained of color. Julian's recorded confession played for everyone to see. The offshore accounts, the forged trust documents, the systematic theft of Clara Thornton's $8 million estate. Every detail laid bare in high definition. "And the worst part," Julian's voice echoed, "is that my mother, Vivienne Thornton, murdered our Aunt Clara to steal her fortune." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phone cameras started clicking. Someone screamed. The screen changed. Clara's original will appeared, her signature clear and unmistakable. Then the forged version, side by side. The differences were obvious, damning. Bank transfer records flashed next. Dates, amounts, account numbers. A paper trail that led straight from Clara's trust to Cayman Island shell corporations to the Thornton family accounts. Vivienne stumbled backward from the podium, her hand over her mouth. "Turn it off," she screamed at the AV booth. "Turn it off now." But the screen kept rolling. Receipts for antifreeze purchased by Vivienne. Dr. Chen's testimony about the falsified death certificate. Emails between Edward and offshore bankers. Every crime, every lie, every stolen dollar exposed in brutal clarity. Edward pushed through the crowd toward the stage. "This is a hack," he shouted. "Someone is trying to destroy us. This is all fabricated." The screen went black again. Then a final image appeared. Clara's diary entry, her elegant handwriting magnified for all to see. "If anything happens to me, Vivienne is responsible. She's been poisoning me. God forgive her." The ballroom exploded, voices shouting over each other. People backing away from the Thorntons like they carried disease. Security guards speaking urgently into radios. That's when Mia stepped out of the shadows. She walked onto the stage, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the opulence around her. Her hair was pulled back. No jewelry, no makeup beyond what was necessary. She looked nothing like the broken girl who'd fled Greenwich 6 weeks ago. She looked like someone who'd walked through fire and come out forged in steel. "You built this family on lies." Mia's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by the microphone Vivienne had abandoned. "And I'm just returning it to the truth." Vivienne's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the stage, her perfect composure shattered. "Mia, please. You don't understand. We can fix this. We're family." "You're not my family," Mia said quietly. "Family doesn't steal, doesn't murder, doesn't destroy their own children for sport." The ballroom doors burst open. Federal agents poured in, badges flashing. Behind them, NYPD in full force. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Edward Thornton, the lead FBI agent's voice rang out. You're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Edward tried to run. He actually tried to run, but 3 agents tackled him before he made it 5 feet. They cuffed him right there on the marble floor, in front of everyone. Cameras flashed like lightning. Vivienne Thornton, another agent, approached the stage. You're under arrest for the murder of Clara Thornton. Vivienne didn't fight. She just wept, mascara streaming down her face, her hands trembling as they pulled them behind her back. I did it for my children, she sobbed. I did it for our family. Isabel screamed from somewhere in the crowd. My accounts. They froze all my accounts. Everything is gone. Everything. Lillian Harper was already halfway to the exit, pushing through the crowd, trying to disappear. But Mia caught her eye across the ballroom. Their gazes locked for one long moment. Then Lillian turned and ran. Julian appeared at Mia's side on the stage. He looked older somehow. Lighter. Like he'd been carrying a mountain and finally put it down. You did it, he whispered. Mia watched as their parents were led away in handcuffs. Watched as Isabel collapsed, held up by shocked friends who were already backing away. Watched as 30 years of carefully constructed lies crumbled in real time. No, she said softly. We did what had to be done. Somewhere in the ballroom, a piano player who hadn't gotten the memo started playing. Something classical. Something melancholy. The notes drifted through the chaos like smoke. Mia closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. It was sad. It was liberating. It was the sound of an empire falling and a woman rising from its ashes. When she opened her eyes, the cameras were on her. Every phone, every news crew, every journalist in the room. But she didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't say another word. She just walked off that stage with her head high, Julian beside her, and left the Thornton legacy burning behind her. The Connecticut Superior Court chambers were quiet except for the sound of the judge's gavel. In the matter of the estate of Clara Thornton, this court finds that Mia Thornton is the sole rightful heir to the complete estate, including all trust funds, property holdings, and corporate shares. Judge Morrison's voice echoed through the wood-paneled room. The fraudulent amendments are hereby declared null and void. $8.3 million. The original amount, plus 3 years of compound interest, it came to just over $9 million. Mia sat in the front row, Julian beside her. She wore a navy suit she'd bought off the rack at Macy's. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Sarah Chen, who'd worked pro bono because she'd once been Clara's student, squeezed her hand. Behind them, the gallery was empty except for reporters and a handful of Clara's old friends. Professor Chen from Yale, Margaret Wu, who'd run the Greenwich Historical Society with Clara, Robert Mills, Clara's estate attorney who'd been suspicious from the beginning. Edward and Vivienne weren't there. They were in federal custody, awaiting trial. Isabel had fled to the Hamptons, hiding in a friend's beach house, her social media accounts deleted, her reputation in ruins. Lillian Harper had vanished completely, gone like smoke. The gavel came down one final time. This court is adjourned. It was over. But standing outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in her face, Mia felt nothing like victory. She felt hollow, exhausted, like she'd won a war but lost something vital in the fighting. Miss Thornton, what will you do with the money? A reporter shouted. Mia looked at the cameras, at the hungry faces waiting for her to gloat, to celebrate, to become everything her parents had been. I don't know yet, she said quietly. Then she walked away. 3 months later, Mia stood in a renovated brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn. The sign above the door read, "The Clara Thornton Foundation, supporting women breaking free." It had taken most of the estate to set up: legal fees, property costs, endowment funding. The foundation offered counseling, legal support, job training, and emergency housing for young women trying to escape toxic families. Everything Mia had needed and never had. She'd kept enough to live on, a modest amount, enough for a small studio apartment 3 blocks away, enough to pay herself a salary as the foundation's director. Nothing close to the Greenwich lifestyle. She didn't want it anymore. The foundation's first client was a 22-year-old woman from Westchester whose parents had controlled every aspect of her life. The second was a 19-year-old whose family had stolen her college fund. The third was a 17-year-old who'd been told she was worthless her entire life. Mia saw herself in every single one of them. Julian visited often. He'd resigned from all the Thornton companies, changed his last name to his mother's maiden name, Pierce. He was seeing a therapist twice a week, trying to untangle 28 years of complicity and guilt. "You saved us both," he told Mia one afternoon, sitting in her tiny office. "No," she said. "We saved each other." The nights were still hard. Mia would lie awake in her studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The humiliation at Isabel's party, Clara's diary entries, the look on Vivienne's face as she was arrested, the hollow victory in that courtroom. Some mornings she'd wake up and forget it all happened. Then she'd remember, and the weight would settle on her chest all over again. But slowly, week by week, the weight got lighter. One Saturday morning, Mia was cleaning out her apartment when she found Clara's old trunk. She'd moved it from storage months ago but never opened it. Just an old steamer trunk, scuffed leather and tarnished brass. She knelt beside it and lifted the lid. Inside were Clara's things: photo albums, old letters, a silk scarf that still smelled faintly of her perfume. And at the bottom, tucked into a hidden compartment Mia almost missed, a sealed envelope. Her name was written on it in Clara's handwriting. Mia's hands shook as she opened it. The letter was dated 2 weeks before Clara died, before the poisoning got bad, when she still had clarity. "My dearest Mia," it began. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've discovered what they did. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from them. Sorry I couldn't be stronger." Mia's eyes blurred with tears. "But I need you to know something. Strength isn't in revenge, though God knows they deserve it. Strength isn't in becoming hard, though the world will try to make you that way." The ink was slightly smudged, as if Clara had cried while writing. "Real strength, the kind that lasts, is in not letting them make you less than yourself. It's in choosing peace when they taught you pain. It's in building something beautiful from the ashes they left behind." At the bottom, a final line: "Don't let their poison become yours. You were always meant for more than their small, cruel world. Love, Aunt Clara." Mia sat on her apartment floor and cried. Really cried. For the first time since this all began, she let herself feel everything: the grief, the anger, the betrayal, the terrible aching relief that it was over. When the tears stopped, something had shifted. The weight on her chest was gone. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her wallet. A reminder, a compass. That evening, Mia walked to the Brooklyn Bridge. The sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and burning orange. The city stretched out before her, 8 million people, 8 million stories, all of them fighting their own battles. She stood in the middle of the bridge, wind catching her hair, the East River flowing beneath her feet. The Statue of Liberty rose in the distance. The skyline glittered like promise. For the first time in 25 years, Mia felt free. Not because she'd destroyed her family, not because she'd won, but because she'd chosen to let go, to build instead of burn, to heal instead of hate. They'd taught her that she was worthless. She'd proven she was invaluable. They'd taught her pain. She'd taught herself peace. And that's how she became everything they feared. Not a Thornton, not a victim, not a weapon of revenge. Just Mia. Finally, completely, powerfully herself. She smiled as the sun dipped below the horizon, turning the river to liquid fire. Behind her, the bridge stretched back to Brooklyn. Her home, her foundation, her future. She turned and walked toward it, one step at a time, leaving the Thornton legacy behind with the setting Sunday. Sometimes revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's resurrection. Would you forgive the family that humiliated you, or would you expose every secret they've buried? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. You never know whose story might save you next.